Good morning or afternoon, as it may be, everybody. I'm Chris Attewell. I'm CEO of Search Laboratory, and welcome to today's webinar on how to save money and reduce costs through data-driven marketing. Very briefly, for those who aren't familiar with Search Laboratory, we are an integrated global digital marketing agency of around 150 people, and that's split between an office in the UK and in the US in New York. In practical terms, that means that we support clients at all stages of the online user journey. That includes SEO, paid media, programmatic advertising, social media, and digital strategy. And we're able to do that globally, and we do that through employing a large in-house team of native linguists. We also provide analytics consultancy and support, and as a Google marketing platform sales partner, we're one of a select number of agencies who sell and service Google's enterprise marketing technology stack. As part of that partnership, we also work closely with Google's top tier of advertisers to improve digital marketing efficiencies. And we do this through the adoption of best practices around data, technology, and digital marketing in general. Today, we're going to look at some of the ways in which these leading advertisers are leveraging data and technology to reduce costs and increase revenue from the digital marketing campaigns. And most importantly, provide you with some practical examples of things that you can go away to your own business and implement to improve efficiencies yourselves. In terms of some general housekeeping, the webinar should last about 30 minutes. If you do have any questions as we go along, please send them in via the chat box at the side of the screen, and we'll spend a few minutes at the end of the presentation to answer these. So just to begin with a bit of a statement and tell you something that I'm sure you already know. So consumers interact with your brand across multiple devices and multiple touch points. I guess that's no surprise to anybody in today's day and age. Some stats just to highlight that a bit more. So again, no surprise to anybody, but mobile usage has been growing steadily over the past few years. It has started to plateau, but it is still showing some slight growth in recent years. What this means is that people are connecting more with your brand via mobile telephones. I'm sure you'd have seen all this yourselves in your analytics, that you're getting more traffic through mobile. We also know that it's not just traffic, it's revenue in an e-commerce world. People are now beginning to transact more on mobiles than they do on desktop. Mobile revenue has now overtaken desktop revenue. Again, I'm sure you've seen similar trends in your own business. And then finally, this increased use of mobile means that people are searching in different ways. So they're not just looking for a product or service that they can buy online. Increasingly, we're finding that people are interacting with brands across multiple online and offline touch points. So in this example here, searches for product near me, we assume here that somebody is looking online, but then they're going to go offline and transact and finalize that purchase. When you then add into that additional platforms like Facebook and now Amazon, who've grown their audience and their advertising businesses, it all adds up to a world where your customers are interacting with your brands in multiple ways across multiple devices and multiple channels. It used to be difficult to track all of this, and it's still not perfect today, but advances in technology have definitely made it easier to track people across all of these different devices and channels. You may be aware, but Google consolidated their advertising and analytics suites last year. So this was bringing together the double-click ad stack and the 360 suite of tools which centered around analytics into what's now the consolidated Google Marketing Platform suite of products. The Google Marketing Platform, or GMP, offers a range of different individual products. The idea is one consolidated suite of tools that help you to share, analyze, and activate audiences and data across multiple channels and multiple devices. In terms of our relationship with Google and how that fits alongside this technology, Google are very much focused on building technology. They have tried in the past to be services focused and be a services business, but they recognize that their strong points lie more within building and designing and building best-in-class technology, and not necessarily in the servicing of that technology. And this is where the partner network comes in. So Search Laboratory is a partner. We're in the top tier of Google partners as far as Google Marketing Platform, in the sense that we both sell and service licenses, and it's really in the servicing that we support Google. So this is around technology integration, creative services, media management, and strategic consulting and measurement that sits on top of Google's technology. To make sense of this new world of multiple devices and channels and people interacting with brands in lots of different ways, Google worked with Boston Consulting Group to analyze digital marketing activities across a sample of the largest advertising clients across a number of different sectors. The key points that came out of this research were that consumers expect meaningful interactions with your brand at every touch point. Again, I'm sure that doesn't come as a surprise to you, that it's a pretty common sense statement. Interestingly though, what they found was that only 2% of the brands they surveyed use data-driven digital marketing to effectively engage with customers. So all customers expect it, however, only 2% of brands are really achieving this. What's even more interesting was that of those 2% Google found who had achieved data-driven engagement with customers were achieving 20% more revenue with a 30% reduction in cost. So that really shows the value of investing in data-driven digital marketing. So what we want to go through today is to give you some examples of what are the 2% doing, and how can we do the same. So some practical examples of the different things that you can go away and do in your business and implement to improve efficiencies. Off the back of the piece of research, Google put together a framework that they're calling the Digital Maturity Framework. And what this does is create a benchmark for measuring yourselves against the general performance, stats in the industry, and also specific to your vertical. And this is broken down into 5 key areas. Those being attribution, so how are we measuring the value of each point of contact? Assets and ads, this is how are we able to offer the best possible customer experience across all of those different touch points from a creative and ad perspective. How well are we able to identify and engage with the right people in the audience section? How are we able to maximize the reach of messages via the access section? And finally, automation. So how can we simplify operations and improve performance through automation? So those are the key areas that Google has broken down the framework into. And in terms of the scoring for how people sit or where people sit within that measurement framework, it's a 4-stage or a 4-point measurement process. So this goes from nascent or beginner all the way through to multi-moment or super advanced. Anybody who has any kind of relationship with Google directly or who has attended Google events will or should be familiar with the term multi-moment. It's something that they've been talking about for quite a while. Interestingly, what they found, so these are the results from the research that they did in terms of where the brands they surveyed sit within the benchmark. You'll see most people sit within the middle section, so most people are either emerging or connected. You have very few people, as we've said, 2% only of brands they surveyed would really be sitting within that multi-moment segment. And again, a relatively small amount of people are really at the beginning of the journey in that nascent segment. It's very easy to benchmark your own business. You can do this online. We'll send out a link. Actually, I'll share the link at the end of the presentation, and we also share it around afterwards. You can go online and create your own custom digital maturity report. It probably takes around 20 minutes or so to do, but it's really, really insightful. What this does is it scores you against each of those 5 key areas, and then gives you an overall digital maturity score. So it gives you an individual score for each of the 5, and then again, an overall digital maturity score. So this is where you can see your performance in comparison to industry average data, and also in comparison to the top performers for your specific industry. So really interesting to see where you sit. More interesting, I would argue, to understand the different things that you can do to improve your digital maturity, improve your score. And as we've seen, as you improve that score, Google's data has said that you're going to achieve those efficiencies in terms of reduced cost that generates more revenue. So yeah, it's not just a framework for measurement and benchmarking, it's really a roadmap for improving digital maturity. And this is where we come in. So we work with brands and advertisers to help understand in more detail where they sit within the framework. We'll take that report and we'll look through and understand that, in a bit more detail, the specifics behind each of those areas. And then most importantly, we support our clients in helping them improve what they're doing, improve their score, but most importantly, look to reduce cost and improve revenue. So yeah, we wanted to share some practical steps to help you on that journey. So some of the ways that we've seen from working with clients generally, and also as part of this this digital maturity framework project, to improve efficiency and performance. We do that using a framework of what we call service projects that are split across those key areas. There are a number of kind of top sections, 5 key sections, and then each one has a number of subsections in there. There's 20 or so subsections. So I'm not going to run you through every single one in detail. I think that would be a little bit less engaging than you want for a webinar. But we have pulled together some examples of some of those to highlight the process and give you some examples of the kind of things that you could work on in your own business within this framework. As a bit of a quote from Sir Tim Berners-Lee, so he predicted in 2007 that we'd have access to a huge range of data and that this would empower us to do really exciting things. The first piece of advice that we give to clients, because you do have access to a huge range of different forms of data, is to invest in getting hold of all of that data and pulling it together into one place so that you can start to really harness that power. As an example, I mean, most people will have data sat in advertising platforms, performance data and cost data. Typically, there'll be some kind of analytics platform, whether it's GA or another analytics platform. And then for most businesses, there'll be some kind of offline data, whether it's a B2B business with CRM data, potentially an e-commerce business that has a back-end CRM that sits behind an e-commerce platform. Obviously, there are some kind of technology requirements here, but what we always advise clients do first of all is to really concentrate on getting the data that they need in somewhere where they can make sense of it as a single view. In the Google world, we typically use BigQuery, which is the data warehouse that actually sits within Google Cloud, but interfaces with Analytics 360. Once you've done that, once everything's in the same place, so all of your offline data, your web analytics data, your advertising data, it's very easy to then surface that via, again, in the Google World Data Studio or Tableau or any of the data visualization or BI tools that you may be using in your business. But the key point, again, to get across, and I don't want to stress this enough, is before you start to try to do some of the exciting things that we're going to touch on and some of the more exciting things that I'm sure you've got plans to do in your business, the most important thing is to get everything in one place, get a single view of your data. Once you've done that, you can query it, slice it up, analyze it to your heart's content. So this is where we want to talk you through some of the examples from within the digital maturity framework of the kind of things that would sit at the beginner level and the kind of things that would sit in the super advanced multi-moment level, and hopefully give you some ideas of the more advanced things that I guess the leaders out there in the market are doing that are helping generate those efficiencies that we talked about. So the first one would be, so in that attribution segment, we tend to find, somebody who's pulling data from individual channels and reporting in silos. So that would be, pulling out a report from Google Ads, pulling a report from their email platform, pulling a report out from whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever, and then reporting on those channels in silos. That would sit very much towards the nascent end of that benchmark. Once we start to get more towards the multi-moment, we'll see that people have invested in, pulling all the data into one place and really invested in the technology that would allow them to create automated dashboards with consolidated data across multiple channels. So it's no longer looking at things in silos. It's looking at everything consolidated, and it's no longer, manually pulling reports out of different platforms. It's having everything automated, so when you log in there, it's ready for you, and you don't have to spend the time going and looking for it. Here's a really good example of this. So this is an example of the kind of e-commerce trading dashboard that we put together for retail clients. So I'm not sure if we have any retailers on. If we do, I'm sure you'll be familiar with having a trading meeting, probably on a Monday at some point, and having to go in there and look at performance last week and explain performance. What we find from working with a lot of retailers is a lot of Monday morning tends to be spent running around trying to pull all the data, which leaves very little time to actually get any insights from the data. So it's kind of running into the trading meeting with the data, but not necessarily the insights. So this is a very simple Data Studio dashboard. In this scenario, we've pulled in things like cost data. We've pulled in performance data. There's nothing to stop you pulling in any other data from across your business. So that may be delivery or return rates. It may be stock levels. Any metrics that you're talking about as a business, you'd want to maybe pull in there as well. But from a purely digital marketing performance perspective, we're talking about a consolidated view of all channels, which is automated. As soon as you log in, it's there, and it's deduped as well. So it's a single version of the truth for everything that happened last week. I guess in terms of the difference between somebody sitting in the nascent level and pulling all of those reports manually and someone sitting at the top multi-moment level, we see that the companies that have invested they're spending their time in looking at analysis and insights of data rather than spending their time pulling data. So you're already one step ahead by just automating, having everything in the same place. Another example from within the attribution section would be attribution purely. I guess most people would be familiar with last click attribution. Most people would know that it's pretty flawed, but there are still a surprising amount of companies out there who still report on performance on a last click basis. As I said, we know that it's flawed, but I guess a lot of people are still kind of stuck with that. To move up the framework, once you start to get to that connected level, we'd start to see people using data-driven attribution, whether that's the data-driven attribution reports that are available as standard within GA360, data-driven attribution within Google Ads or Search Ads 360. That's definitely a step in the right direction and gives you a more insightful view of the true performance and the true value that each channel has delivered. Again, it's not perfect because it is very much looking at online. When we start to look at the multi-moment or the super advanced, we'll see people who would be building a data-driven attribution model that pulls in both online and offline data. So we've done this for a number of clients. We typically would build in BigQuery. So this is pulling in, as we talked about at the beginning, you know, once we have all of that online data, that platform data, and the CRM or offline data in one place, we can then start to, you know, decide on what attribution model is best and build that custom in BigQuery that we can surface via a visualization tool, but giving you a full view of everything that's happened to generate the sale, and the insights as to which of those channels have actually delivered the value through that purchase path. So yeah, so going from, you know, at the very beginning, going from a last click basis, everybody knows that that's flawed. There are certainly some things that you can do around data-driven attribution. As much as there are no perfect attribution models, and you know, you can argue that everyone has certain flaws, moving more towards a data-driven custom model that uses both online and offline data is the kind of things that those leading advertisers are doing that are generating those efficiencies. If we then move into the audience section, I guess most people will be doing basic retargeting. It's something that's very, very easy to do through the likes of Google Ads and Facebook, and can be very effective in helping to convert customers. In terms of what audience targeting looks like more in the multi-moment world, so this would be creating custom audiences using a mix of both online and offline data. And what that allows us to do is then target users at all stages of the buy-in cycle. The example of that we wanted to give, so here's a user matrix or a customer matrix, again from an e-commerce world, looking at recent activity, purchase habits, average spend, etc. So we can pull lots of different segments from this. We wanted to highlight the example of what we would call a VIP segment. So there's the people who've bought recently. They are frequent buyers. They have a high average order value. You know, don't typically buy sale items. Very low return rate, and also they're users of the app. So we're going to say that those are the people who are most engaged. Those are our VIPs. Anyone with a relatively straightforward email CRM program, I'm sure we'll be targeting these VIP segments via email and potentially SMS. But what we wanted to highlight are different ways that you can talk to those users via other channels, so via display advertising, and how you can maybe target those users differently via some of the advertising platforms. So, you know, you may want to talk specifically to those people about new launches. It may be that you want a loose frequency cap on your advertising. You may want to target these people with refer a friend if you know that they're loyal. One interesting thing that you know, we don't see a huge amount of people doing, but this is really really interesting if you have the data to do it, is, you know, creating those VIP segments of customers and pushing them out to exclude from certain campaigns within Google Ads, for example. So if we know that somebody's a repeat purchaser and they're going to come back and buy based on the data, then, you know, there's an argument for excluding that segment of people from any PPC. You know, we definitely don't want them to be in the brand campaigns, because they're going to come back and purchase from the brand anyway. And there's probably a strong argument to test removing them from non-brand campaigns as well. Obviously, the clicks are very expensive, and if we're confident that those people are going to come back and buy anyway, then there's an argument for testing whether we take them out of those campaigns as well to save budget. And then finally, obviously, creating some similar audiences from those VIPs and go prospecting across some different platforms to find similar people. In terms of how that's activated in the Google world, in the Google marketing platform, this is where the audience sharing functions within Google marketing platform really come into play. So we can create those audiences in Analytics 360, and then we can push those audiences out for activation across the ad platforms, so Google Ads, Search Ads 360, and Display and Video, and equally into Optimize 360, which is the online personalization and A/B testing tool. So in the first instance, pulling all the data together and building the audiences, both online and offline data, and then, you know, how can we actively use those audiences across the different ad platforms and across your website. Another example from the audience section, which is half with an audience and actually half within attribution and measurement, really. But we tend to find that a lot of companies we work with will measure digital campaign performance on ROI or cost of sale or ROAS, and while that does give an insight at a channel level, so I've spent this much on PPC and I've generated this many orders, it doesn't necessarily give the full value to PPC that it should do, really. So what we tend to find when people move up the framework is you'll see people using new customer cost per acquisition targets or potentially lifetime value to measure the performance of those campaigns. So rather than just looking at, I spent this amount of money and I made this sale, and did I make any money on the sale? It's starting to understand, how much am I willing to pay for a new customer based on what's the lifetime value of that customer? And therefore, is my marketing efficient in delivering new customers rather than efficient in delivering sales? Very basic example of that, if we have a $45 CPA on an order and our average order value is $40, then that's going to be very difficult to justify increasing investment in that channel. If, however, we can prove that that $45 CPA actually turned into a client worth $150, we're going to be far more likely to invest in that channel based on a 333% ROAS than we would be based on a loss looking at the single channel ROI. The really advanced use of audiences and lifetime value in particular within audiences is we're seeing people now starting to predict the lifetime value of new customers at the first point when they actually land on your website. So obviously it takes a bit of time to gather the data and understand how much people are going to spend with you over time. But at the time when somebody lands on your website, we already know quite a lot of information about them. We know demographic information, we're going to know which channels they've come from. We can start to then build more of a picture as they navigate around the website. We've just done this recently for a client in the kitchen supply and installation space, and the challenge that they had was somebody goes on a website, they look around the website, they fill in a form to request an appointment at a showroom to go in and look to hopefully purchase a kitchen. Now, there's obviously a lag between when the form is filled in and when that person goes into the kitchen, and then a further lag between going into the showroom, rather, speaking to the sales consultant, potentially purchasing a kitchen, which could be months down the line. So what we were able to do here using by pulling all of their data, all of their online and offline data, all of their previous user journeys and form fills and kitchen sales, pulling all that into BigQuery and using TensorFlow, which is one of Google's machine learning technologies, we were able to predict the lifetime value, or predict the customer value in this case, at the time when somebody fills in the form. So we know which channels they've engaged with before they got to the website. We know some demographic information. We know their location, for example. We know the information they've filled in the form. We know what they've engaged with in the website, what kind of content they've spent time viewing. And based on all of that information and looking at all previous visits that had very similar profiles to that visit, we're able to then predict at what percentage likelihood they're going to fill in a form and what the value of the kitchen will be if they do actually go ahead and purchase it. So this allows us to build up audiences very, very quickly. We can build up audiences of VIPs before anybody's even at the point where somebody's filled in a form and they haven't given any more data really beyond that. And we can also use that information to pass back out to bidding platforms, so we can start to optimize our bidding strategies towards finding the right kind of potential customers at the right kind of value. So really, really advanced use of technology, and in this case, machine learning technology, to start to predict future performance of customers before they've actually done anything. So those were a few ideas. As I said, within that framework, there are multiple of those different service projects that we work on with clients. If anybody is interested, we'd love to take you through some of those in more detail. But in terms of a few takeaways from the webinar, we've already said consumers expect that excellence across all of those multiple touch points. That is just an expectation these days. The technology used to struggle to do this, but it's really there and available to enable this today. We've seen from Google's research that the brands who are able to use the technology to engage with customers across multiple touch points will outperform competitors. Also, as we've said, it is really leveraging your data that's the key to the success, and being able to pull all of that data into one place, so investing in the data to be able to leverage it is really the key to success. And I would say as well, benchmark your own performance. That online report is available and free to generate. It's really quickly. It probably takes around 20 minutes. We'll share out a link afterwards that has the link to the report. I would also say we work closely with clients who have filled in that report. Once you've done it, if you would like to have a consultation, if you'd like us to talk through the results in more detail and then help you to identify some of the projects that would improve what you're doing at the moment and help you to generate some efficiencies, we'd really love to do that. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to give some advice and hopefully help you to reduce costs and increase revenue generation. That's everything for today. I can see we don't have any questions as it stands, so I think we may just leave it there. Thanks very much, everybody. Look forward to hopefully engaging soon.